Dwarfism. In today's world, we understand it as a medical condition, something that simply makes a person's body grow differently. But in the ruthless world of royal history, dwarfism could be a life sentence. Imagine you are born into a royal palace. Your first bed is covered in silk. Golden candlelight dances on the walls. You are a prince, or perhaps a princess. The air smells of perfume, and you are surrounded by the most powerful people in the land. Servants bow as they carry you. Everyone expects that your life will be one of luxury, power, and respect. But in the very first moments of your life, something changes. Your parents look down at you and realize that you are different. You are small. Your proportions are different. You are a dwarf. And in the strange and cruel world of royal courts, this is not simply a physical trait. It is a disaster. It is a shameful secret that no one wants to talk about. For centuries, kings and queens believed that a royal child with dwarfism was a bad omen, a punishment from God, or a sign that their bloodline was flawed. The moment this discovery was made, your future was rewritten, and often in the most shocking and heartbreaking ways. Some of these children were locked away in remote estates, never allowed to be seen by outsiders. Others were kept inside the palace but stripped of their royal status. Instead of being raised as heirs, they were treated as court curiosities, dressed in costumes, paraded for entertainment, and even forced to take part in humiliating spectacles. This is the hidden and disturbing history of royal children who were dwarfs, children who were born into crowns but lived under shadows. In the days before science explained medical conditions, dwarfism was wrapped in layers of superstition and ignorance. People had no understanding of genetics. They saw physical differences through the lens of fear and myth. In many royal courts, a ruler's image meant everything. Kings and queens were supposed to embody perfection, tall, strong, healthy, and beautiful. They were living symbols of power, and any physical imperfection was seen as a threat to that image. So when a child was born with dwarfism, the family faced an unspoken crisis. Could they risk letting the world know? If foreign ambassadors saw the child, rumors would spread like wildfire across Europe. Rivals might whisper that the royal bloodline was weak. In an age obsessed with creating the perfect heir, such whispers could destabilize a throne. Most of the time, the decision was brutal. The child would either be hidden away completely, living far from the capital in quiet isolation, or they would be allowed to stay in the palace but never be treated as a true prince or princess. Their existence was carefully controlled, their future tightly limited. For many of these children, life meant exile without leaving the country. In Spain's powerful Habsburg dynasty, which ruled vast territories across Europe, physical difference was considered dangerous to the monarchy's image. A child with visible disabilities could not be paraded before the people, could not be included in official portraits, and could certainly not be shown to foreign diplomats. These children were often sent to remote estates, convents, or monasteries. There they would be raised by trusted servants, cut off from the grand life of the court. Perhaps they were loved in private, perhaps they were cared for, but they were also hidden away as if they were stains on the royal name. Once they were gone from the palace, they vanished from the historical record. Official documents rarely mentioned them. Public ceremonies never included them. They simply disappeared. How many royal dwarf children were born and erased from history? We will never know. For a few royal children with dwarfism, life at court was more visible, but not necessarily kinder. Some were allowed to live in the palace, but they were stripped of the dignity of being treated as future rulers. Instead, they were given roles as companions, entertainers, or symbols of the king's kindness. One of the most famous surviving images of a court dwarf comes from the Spanish painter Diego Velázquez. In 1656, he painted the legendary Las Meninas, a masterpiece showing the young Princess Margarita Teresa surrounded by her attendants. Among them stands Maria Barbara, a dwarf lady from a noble German family. Maria was not a peasant. She came from good blood and was given fine clothing and privileges. She was chosen to be a constant companion for the princess, a charming and unusual presence meant to amuse and delight the royal household. This was considered an honor. But in truth, Maria's place in the painting, and in the court, was a reminder of how fascinated royal society was with physical difference. She lived in luxury, yes, but also as part of a living display. Some courts treated dwarfs, even noble-born ones, as pure entertainment. In France, during the glittering reign of Louis XIV, dwarfs were often dressed in elaborate costumes and made to perform in theatrical spectacles. At banquets, they might be seated at miniature tables to the laughter of the guests. At masquerade balls, they might be dressed as tiny kings, knights, or shepherds. In Russia, Tsar Peter the Great turned this kind of treatment into a public obsession. Fascinated by dwarfs, he collected them like exotic treasures, inviting dozens to live at court. One of the most infamous events in his reign was the mock wedding of dwarfs in 1710. Peter ordered dozens of dwarfs, some of them from noble families, to be dressed in miniature wedding outfits and marched before the entire court. Among them was a man nicknamed Copper-Nose, who was believed to be connected to the extended royal family. For Peter, it was great entertainment. For the people forced to take part, it was humiliation. If a royal child had been born with dwarfism in Peter's Russia, they would almost certainly have been placed in this cruel spotlight. In Italy, the powerful Gonzaga family of Mantua also filled their court with dwarfs. Some were brought from far-off lands as curiosities, but others were distant relatives whose dwarfism made them unsuitable as heirs. These children were given ceremonial positions and shown off in public festivals. At grand parades, they might be dressed as miniature soldiers, tiny knights, or miniature courtiers. On the surface, it looked festive, but beneath the glittering costumes, it was yet another way to turn a human being into a spectacle for the amusement of the powerful. Silk and gold cannot hide humiliation. Even in the rare cases where a royal dwarf child lived in comfort with the finest clothes and endless servants, their life was not truly their own. They were told what to wear, where to stand, and even who to marry. In some cases, they were deliberately paired with other dwarfs to make a matching set for the court's amusement. Sometimes they were brought out as examples of the king's mercy and kindness, paraded before foreign guests so that visitors would say, "Look at the generosity of this ruler, who even cares for those who are different." But this was not genuine respect. It was controlled, performative, and self-serving. For many others, there was no silk, no luxury, no public role. They were quietly removed from court life entirely. Placed in monasteries or convents, they were given the excuse of a religious calling to explain their disappearance. In reality, they had simply been erased from the royal world, and once hidden away, their names faded from history. In the great archives of kings and queens, such children rarely appear. They were written out of the family story, as if they had never been born. Historians struggle to uncover the truth about these children. The records are incomplete. The paintings, if they exist at all, often hide them in the background or in shadow. The royal portraits we know, the perfect families, the elegant heirs, were carefully crafted illusions. They were meant to show only what the monarch wanted the world to see, but if you look closely, behind those polished images, there are gaps, missing names, missing faces. The way these children were treated tells us something unsettling about power. Royal privilege was never just about wealth and comfort. It was about control. The power to decide who was worthy of being seen and remembered, and who would be hidden away. For a child with dwarfism, being born in a palace was no guarantee of happiness. You could be surrounded by gold and still live in a cage of humiliation. You could be the son or daughter of a king and still have no real identity, no real life outside of what the ruler decided for you. History celebrates the beauty and glory of kings and queens. But the truth is darker. Behind the glitter and ceremony are the stories of people who didn't fit the perfect royal image. And for those royal children who were dwarfs, the cruelest fate was not poverty, not pain, but being erased from the history they were born to shape, erased from the memory of the world, erased even from their own family's pride. Thanks for watching and remember to subscribe.